Hi, I'm Douglas Estes, Associate Professor of Religion at New College.
And I'm Alicia Mercado-Harvey, Assistant Professor of Spanish, Portuguese, and History.
Hi, David Allen Harvey, Professor of History and Chair of the Faculty at New College.
Welcome. Good to have you. You actually inaugurated last year, right? Our podcast. So welcome again to talk about different things, right? We're going to be talking a little bit about your scholarship, your teaching, and of course your role as chair of the faculty. So let's start with the book. It won a prize. So tell us a little bit about the prize.
Sure. So this is my latest book, Tropical Despotisms, Enlightened Reform in the French Caribbean. Came out last year from Cornell University Press. And beginning of this calendar year, I was notified that the book had won the Mary Alice and Philip Boucher Prize in French Colonial History from the French Colonial Historical Society, which is for the best book of the year in French colonial history prior to 1815. So that was just tremendously exciting and very validating for a project that I'd spent so much time on.
Wow, that's great. So tell us a little bit more about next steps with this prize then.
So one thing that's really exciting about it is that the French Colonial Historical Society has invited me to a plenary session at their next conference, which is going to be dedicated to discussion of the book, which is a tremendous scholarly honor. And this is going to be at the National University of Ireland in Maynooth next June. So that's exciting too. The location will be great to visit.
Great. So what is your next research project? Are you working on anything right now?
Yes. So one of the reasons that this book wound up taking me such a long time to write, in part, in addition to all of the administrative work I've done that I guess we'll talk about next, but that I realized that I'd done research for about a book and a half. So I was really interested in French colonialism in the period from between the end of the 7 Years' War and the French Revolution, which also coincides with the late Enlightenment, and just some of the philosophical tensions between the Enlightenment and its philanthropic principles on the one hand, and colonialism and slavery on the other. So that's is sort of a central contradiction that drives the research. I was initially interested in looking both at the established French colonies in the Caribbean, which this book wound up focusing entirely on, and a series of mostly failed new colonial ventures in other parts of the world at the same time. So I'd done a lot of archival work on those projects, but presented some conference papers on them and so forth, but they didn't really fit into the framework of this book. So they're going to be the nucleus of the next book, which Cornell's also expressed interest in, but obviously they want to see a manuscript before they commit to it. So this involves basically 4 case studies. There is the expedition to Kourou in French Guiana. This is probably the best known of the cases because it just turns into this massive humanitarian disaster where most of the colonists die of disease, hunger, and so forth. There was a short-lived attempt to create a French colony on the Falkland Islands, and then there were 2 separate attempts to create a colony at Madagascar. So those are the 4 case studies covering the period from the 1760s and 1770s that are going to be the focus of the next book.
Great.
Sounds really interesting. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the cover of the book. Is
Yes.
this some art from a local artist? So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, so I asked my friend Jean-René Rainville, who is he's Haitian-American. He is an artist, MFA from the Art Institute of Chicago's school, so really accomplished guy, very interesting. So I asked him to create an original piece of art for the cover, which he did. You can see it came out a beautiful piece. And we have some exciting news about Jean-René also that I guess you can share with our viewing community.
Yes, so he will be here for Black History Month. We're beginning of February, and he will do a documentary. One of his documentaries is going to be screened with the Q&A. We're going to have a compa class, which is the national dance of Haiti, and his paintings are going to be displayed. So it's going to be a really great celebration of Black History Month. So,
And just a great connection between New College and the broader Tampa Bay community that we're a part of.
Great. So tell us about your classes this semester. Are you teaching anything interesting, or do you have anything on the horizon maybe next semester that's very interesting?
Okay, well, I can talk. This academic year, I am teaching my two-part Introduction to Modern European History. So the first half in the fall, second half in the spring. It's a course that is part of our general education curriculum. So it's, for New College standards, at least a relatively large class. It has about 30 students, most of them first and second years. And I'm very pleased with how it's going. I feel like the students are engaging with the topic and taking from it what I want them to learn from it.
Great. I think the last time you were on the podcast, it was right before you became chair of the faculty.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the transition to chair of the faculty and just how it's going right now.
So it's actually my second term as chair of the faculty. I previously served in this role from 2019 to 2022. In the interim, I served for, I guess, about a year and a half as chair of the EPC, the Educational Policy Committee. And after that, I was founding dean for our Great Books program. And so I stepped down from that role as soon as I was elected again as chair of the faculty. I actually was pleased that two long-term colleagues each asked me if I'd be willing to stand for election again. So it's really validating to get that kind of an endorsement from one's peers. And I do feel like this in a lot of ways is a really critical moment for New College, so I was happy to step back into the arena.
So tell us, speaking of, how do you see your role as chair of the faculty, and how do you see New College going forward?
Well, it's no secret to anyone, I think, that New College has gone through some pretty substantial changes. We had obviously most of our Board of Trustees was renewed at the start of 2023. We had a new president, Richard Corcoran, who actually appointed in March, really began, I guess, in earnest on our campus in May of 2023. And we've had pretty significant faculty turnover. We had a number of faculty retire or resign. And I think over the last few years, about 40 or 50 new faculty have come on board, representing, I think, almost half of the total faculty at this point. So I think really my most important role is to try to be a bridge, to try to bring the old and the new faculty together, to help onboard our new colleagues, help them understand what New College is about, what's expected of them, and to try as much as possible to build a sense of community and common purpose as we move forward in the next chapter of New College's history.
One of the things that we encounter because of the transition and because it is oftentimes mentioned in national media is that sometimes there's myths that surround New College. Can you pick some of the oddest or the funniest myths or some of the most pervasive myths that exist about New College?
Well, I'll give a few examples just as personal prerogative, but there's a lot that could be said, and I think this can lead into a broader conversation about where we're going. One of the things that I think I was really not prepared for, I understand that there are people who even disagree strongly with the direction that the college has gone. I wasn't prepared for bad faith arguments, or for people making statements that are just not true. So to give you an example, or a couple of examples really, I remember when I was in the role of building the Great Books program, we were actually exploring a lot of different avenues at the same time, some of which we wound up enacting, such as our new on-campus major or area of concentration in great books, some of which we have not acted on, at least to this date, such as the idea of a purely online degree program, both AA and BA, in great books. But I remember when we'd made an announcement that we were going to be rolling out an online associate's degree in great books, there was an alum who was posting on social media that we were essentially becoming a community college, that we weren't a 4-year college anymore. And I don't know where she got that from. It wasn't at all substantiated by the facts. Now, it's a relatively new thing that New College decided to, for on-campus students who want one, to award an associate's degree in sort of general liberal arts. This is particularly useful for students who may ultimately decide to transfer and go somewhere else to have a credential that they can take with them. So it's really about trying to help the students, but it was just absurd that she was making this misrepresentation. I saw another one actually just the other day, and this came out of the Florida Doge report on the state university system, which gave a number of measures, dinged us on a couple of points, but there was one slide that was looking at is actually kind of a strange measure because I've never seen this as a category, but it was about the ratio of degrees awarded to the total student body. The number, New College, so you would expect, at a 4-year institution, that's going to be about 25%. For some institutions, it's actually a little more because a lot of their students start out as transfers, or maybe graduate in a shorter period of time. But our number was 19%. So someone was posting on social media that we had a 19% graduation rate. Now, if that were true, it would be a sort of 5-alarm fire situation. Right. Now, of course it isn't true.
Right.
But it's just when you have people deliberately putting out false information to try and discredit the college, it's very frustrating. One that actually touched me personally involved the circumstances of my election as chair of the faculty. Now, this took place obviously at kind of a contentious moment, a moment of a lot of turnover. A majority of those who voted did vote in favor of me as chair, but there was a very high number of non-votes which got reported out as abstentions, which actually isn't correct. There wasn't an abstain option on the ballot. These were people who didn't vote, some of whom had actually left New College or were in the process of leaving. But there are still people out there who are claiming that a majority of the faculty abstained, and so my election is somehow illegitimate. So it's just frustrating to have to deal with all of this misinformation. But we keep going. We keep trying to put the facts out there. Not shy away from areas where we recognize we need to improve, but also to try and counteract a sort of sky is falling narrative that, in my view, does not accurately reflect where New College is right now.
Right.
I mean, temperatures run high, and it's unfortunate when these myths are perpetuated, but by so many measures, it seems like New College is doing great. We have more students than we've ever had before. The faculty that have come in have been very impressive from their credentials. Certainly, I don't want to compare them with the quote-unquote old faculty, but in the sense that they are highly capable of leading this college into the future. No two ways about it. And like with every college, we struggle with some of the metrics and some of the details. If you look at any higher ed report, colleges have questions and have challenges from Harvard down to community college. There's questions. So.
All right, so you recently had a piece, right, in the Herald Tribune setting some of this records straight, right? Because there's been so much misinformation, so many things that have been reported inaccurately. So could you tell us a little bit about that piece?
Sure. So one of the things that I wanted to do is just to I think we can have legitimate debates about the direction of the college and areas where we need to improve, but it really is important that we're all sort of talking about the facts and making accurate and timely statements. So I started the piece with one of my favorite quotes from the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, that everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but not to their own facts. And so I guess what I wanted to do was add a little bit of nuance to the discussion about the direction that New College has gone, say, over the last 5 to 10 years. Because there are two competing narratives out there, and I think both of them are at least partly wrong. From the standpoint of the critics of the new administration and the sort of defenders of an old New College, everything was going great. Then, we had this takeover of the college, and it's just been a downward spiral ever since. That's not true. Then I think at least from maybe some of the rhetoric on the other side, has suggested that the old New College was just a terrible place. Woke culture run amok. Spiraling downwards, and now everything is fantastic. The truth is more complicated than either of those perceptions. We were facing some negative trends, starting, I guess, in sort of the mid to late 20-teens, downward enrollment trends. So our enrollment dropped from about 875 students in about 2017 down to a low of 620 in spring of 2022. And as a result of that, our selectivity went down from, at our height, accepting maybe around 50% of our applicants to at one point accepting about 75%. Average SATs dropped. So there are a number of downward trends. Then 2023, the year of the transition, was a very difficult year in the history of New College. We had a lot of upheaval, a lot of departures, students, faculty, staff. We had, with the introduction of athletics for the first time in the college's history, just a lot of confusion. And it's not that anyone was to blame for this. It was just learning to do something we had never done before. And coordinating schedules, talking about requirements and juggling of responsibilities. So 2023 was kind of a mess, and most of our indicators from that year consequently look pretty bad. So for people who say that New College is an institution in chaos, I'd say for 2023 that's maybe a fair point. But the point I was trying to get across in that opinion piece is that that's not where we are now. Our enrollment has rebounded substantially. We're up total enrollment just over 900 right now. So, that includes about 50 graduate students in addition to our undergraduate population. So we're on track to hit our target enrollment of 1,200 in a few years, I think, which really for the first time ever. And by both objective statistical measures and by the more subjective perceptions that I feel and that other faculty I've spoken with have felt, the 2025 entering class is significantly stronger than the ones we've had the last couple of years. We've got some really good students in, including, I want to stress, some really good student athletes. And so, what I think is maybe most unfair about this debate is that, sometimes, there's this sort of dumb jock stereotype that, people criticize the student athletes, and that's really not fair.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to, add to that, that I have some incident in very much my experience of having, taught at New College at different stages, like between 2013 and 2015, and then again 2022, adjuncting. And I can definitely tell in this, the reflection of what you just said is exactly what I experienced as a professor here. Students were really good between that 2-year period, 13 to 15. Then the ones I had in the 2020, 2022 were not, I guess it was 2020, were really the lowest I've ever had. And then when I first was hired 2024, that cohort was like, okay. But then the one this year has been so strong.
Yeah.
So it's just, I can definitely say that this is,
Right.
in my experience, which is
At
anecdotal.
the same time, I think there is, I guess, a couple other things I'd like to say. One that I think we can make both objective and subjective assessments of the quality of students at different times in the college's history, but our students are our students. If we've accepted them here, it's our professional and moral obligation to do everything we can to help them to succeed. And I think that to the degree that conflicts both within and without the new college community interfere with that, I think that's really unfortunate. So we absolutely need to focus in on student success. And I think to the extent that we've had problems in the past with retention, I think sometimes there was an unfortunate tendency to think that if students don't succeed at New College, they weren't New College material. And that's really the wrong way to think about this. We need to meet our students where they are and help them to get where we want them to be. And so I think we have, and I want to give a shout out to our excellent provost office. From Provost David Rohrbacher to Associates Provosts Rob Zamsky and Manu Lopez Zafra, to the professional staff that work in that office. It's a really great team. They are
David
deeply,
Rankert.
yeah, Dave Rankert, who is, he's kind of, I guess, almost sort of a free agent administrator who pitches in wherever he's needed. These people are all laser focused on student success. They're all deeply committed to New College, and I think they're doing a terrific job.
Yeah, I think we see in the media, from Harvard to the recently released University of California, San Diego situation, that across the board, American higher education has significant challenges right now. And the thing that I appreciate about you coming on the podcast is that instead of either just accepting one of these, as you said, black and white kind of simplistic scenarios, we're trying to, address our weaknesses. We're growing, we're learning, we're getting better, and we're celebrating our successes. And that's what we want to do as a college. And at the end of the day, a lot of these black and white arguments that exist out there in social media and other phenomenon, they're not serving our students. They're actually just distracting us and detracting from our ability to educate students.
Yeah. And I think, and this is a question that's much bigger than New College, but I think that social media algorithms are really one of the worst things to happen to contemporary society, because
this is a debate for another podcast.
It drives polarization, and when you get past the stereotypes and actually talk to each other, I think we are seeing this within our faculty, within our student population, between both of those groups and the administration. It's easy to stereotype, and if you just view sort of quote unquote the other through the stereotypes that you have about the other side, it doesn't lead anywhere. If you actually talk to people and you actually listen to what they have to say, you find we agree on a lot more than you might assume.
Yeah.
So I think that over the last 2.5 years, we've had that learning process, within our community, as we come to recognize that despite all of the differences that we might have, we all really love this place. We are all committed to the success of our students and to the success of New College as an institution.
Right. One thing that I think maybe folks don't realize is that because we are a small classical liberal arts college, we actually have meetings where we get everybody in the same room together and have a discussion. We are not of the size or scope of a lot of colleges, or certainly Florida State universities, where there are senates who handle things on behalf of the faculty. We actually get together, and we get together by division, we get together as a faculty, and we actually have discussion. And so that's a really cool thing about where we are right now as a college.
Since you mentioned, I want to piggyback on the liberal arts aspect. So I wanted to ask you, because you've been here 25 years, what's your perspective on on what humanities in particular have gone, through humanities, social science, in terms of, because that's another myth, right? I mean, so many resources were taken away, things have been, programs have been killed. Could you tell us what you think that's gone and going?
Well, this is also, it's part of the larger national trends. And, it's no secret, and I've been, talking to a number of, sort of national education reporters about New College and what our experience says about broader trends in higher education. It has been a very difficult time for small liberal arts colleges. A lot of the small private ones, the less prestigious ones, have gone out of business, and part of the reason is that there is a broader discourse out there that you have to study X, Y, or Z to get a good job. Well, one, that's not necessarily true, so I think just looking at the actual data is important, but that combined with shifts in the cost structure of higher education, more and more students nationwide, though I want to stress not at New College, graduating with a lot of student debt. We're actually an outstanding financial bargain for our students. But the fact that nationwide a lot of students are coming out with more and more debt means that interest is shifting away from the humanities, the arts, the social sciences toward technical or professional fields that are seen as leading to a good job and a good salary. Now, nothing against students thinking about their career prospects. That's very important. But one of the things that we have to do as educators is to help educate students and their parents, that you can major in history or religion or literature and find work in any number of areas. So I think that is part of the larger context. Now, as far as the humanities at New College, it is, again, objectively true, and I was there, I saw it, that when we were facing difficult times in the 20-teens, the administration at the time was not renewing tenure track lines in humanities. They were hiring visitors or adjuncts to cover a lot of these areas. And frankly, when we had this change in leadership and we got all of this external scrutiny of the college, one of the things that I was expecting was that we would have a shift away from the liberal arts toward a more vocational or pre-professional orientation. So I was actually favorably surprised that both the new administration and many of our new trustees, would be so committed to liberal arts. Now, it's a different conversation than the one I thought we might be having. What does a liberal arts education mean in the 21st century? So I think you can have, for lack of a better term, woke liberal arts. You can have classical liberal arts. I think the reality is maybe more complex than these two extremes might suggest, but that is a really productive conversation to have. What should a well-educated person in the 21st century know? And that is exactly the kind of conversation that a place like New College, Florida should be having. So I think that's a welcome development.
Well, those are great questions, and a big part of the conversation that's going on in higher ed today. We're excited that you were able to be on the podcast again, David. And
for any questions or comments, you can drop us a line on the YouTube channel, and we'll be happy to answer. And see you next time.